My name's Jacqueline Day, and my programme is the Business Mastery Escalator, the 6 laws to grow, scale and thrive in your business. Well, it's been really fantastic speaking on the stage today for this event that Des O'Connor has put together. You know, whether you're used to speaking or not, Des gives you a lot of encouragement, and that's what's key. I think there's so many people who feel, oh, speaking on stage isn't for me, but Les does give a lot of encouragement. I mean, I'm an international speaker, so I have spoken on stages before, but today the atmosphere has just been absolutely buzzing. It really has, and I think that's a lot to do with the energy that Des gives out as well. So, yeah, it's been brilliant. Really loved it. A friend of mine introduced me to Des, who is also an international speaker, and she's spoken on 1 or 2 platforms with Des in the past. So when she mentioned Des to me, I thought, I'll find out about that. And from the moment I spoke with him, Des was so encouraging, and it kind of, he's a busy person, but he kind of holds your hand all the way through the process. And he's just really encouraging, inviting, lots of energy, and his purpose is to help people. And that really comes from his heart, which is brilliant. Well, I think this is the perfect platform if you're hesitating about speaking on stage, because Des holds your hand, definitely, all the way, and he's so encouraging. And it's just a great atmosphere which he creates in his events. So it's getting over that shyness or whatever it is that's holding you back, and saying to yourself, yeah, I actually can do this. Some more time to go over some of my client successes. Who would like to hear my client successes? Brilliant, thank you. Right, so time for some client success. Before I do that, I'm going to mention Kodak and Blockbusters to you. Now, I'm sure some of you remember Kodak, and I'm told that they used to have a film that they rolled up to put in a camera, but I'm far too young to remember. Some people find that funny. I don't know why. And Kodak actually invented the digital camera. However, they decided there wouldn't be a demand for it. Now, we all live in a digital world, don't we? What would we do without our digital cameras and the things we can do with it? So one of their competitors took it on instead. And the result was Kodak went out of business. And Blockbusters, a similar story. You hired a video off them, and then streaming came along. I mean, Blockbusters had the ideal business model for that time. Streaming came along and it changed the world. And Blockbusters was offered a contract by Netflix, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but lots of times, and they turned it down. And consequently, they too went out of business. So this is what happens when you're not keeping up with the changing world that we're living in, and with technology especially. So I'm telling you this because I'm coming on to a story about a client of mine. Now, my client Norman Evans of Digicom had the belief that it was all over for him. Now, Norman, he was a little bit like Albert Einstein, very clever, I do disc personality profiling, and if anybody knows about that, the C profile is a very detailed person. They love the spreadsheets, they're very exacting, they like to get things right. And Norman was very much like that, but I knew that he was really, really clever. Norman had never had a job because he went straight from university to developing his own business in the film industry, creating documentaries for television and also corporate companies. So he had his own personal crisis. Now, I won't go into what that was, but he believed that it was all over for him. Now, I knew he was articulate, clever, smart, and the belief was false and it wasn't true. So it wasn't true because how you respond will determine how you get through any crisis. So say after me, how I respond, louder, will determine how I get through any crisis. And I was determined to help Norman get through his crisis. Norman, I'm coming to see you tomorrow. We'll have the day together and we'll find a way forward. He says, but Jacqueline, I can't get out to my clients. I know, Norman. We'll spend the day together. We'll find a solution for you. Now, having this false belief may have been the finish of Norman's business. And here's what I taught Norman when he came to my business mastery escalator. Now, on the modelling, it's a 5-step process, and the F stands for future-proof. It's how can you future-proof your business, Norman? Now, with the future-proof, I do a 3-step process, which is the 3 R's. So the first R is respond, and how you respond will determine how you get through any crisis. So I had to do I'm a master practitioner of NLP, so I did do some mindset coaching with Norman because he was looking at what he couldn't have instead of what he could have in his business. And then the second stage was, you might want to write that down, respond. And the second R is to review his business. Now, I knew that Norman had a huge archive of film work. So the question I asked him was, Norman, what have you got in your archive that would really appeal to the American audience, where you could start a new streaming business? So we reviewed and went deep into his archives to work out a plan of what would appeal to the American audience. And obviously this was something he could do at home while he had this crisis on. And I knew that he would be able to do it. I just knew he would, because he's just so detailed and so articulate, but at the same time really creative. So, and the third R is to reinvent. So we were actually reinventing Norman's business. He had to work in a different way that he'd been used to working, where he'd been going out to his clients. So if he'd have carried on having that belief that it was all over for him, he wouldn't have developed this new revenue. And he took that opportunity to do streaming where Blockbusters didn't. So Norman then, within a couple of years, became the #1 streamer in Amazon in the USA, and he now has a lucrative income stream for his business, which he still carries out today, because this was in 2008 when I first met him, and that was round about the time when streaming hit the world. So he took that advantage, that opportunity, and it's seeing those opportunities and acting upon those opportunities in business. So the new true belief that Norman has for his business is it's future-proofed, and he now has a sustainable business no matter what the crisis is. Because recessions come and go. It's a fact of life. There's 3 certainties in life, not 2. They say death and taxes, but the other certainty is recession. And every 10 to 13 years, we're in another recession. So by the time you're 25, you've probably lived through 2 recessions. By the time you're 50, you've probably lived through 4 recessions. By the time you're 75, you've probably lived through 6 recessions. But it's how we respond every single time. It's what new opportunities are coming towards you that you can take advantage of and create a new business from. Now, in the financial crisis in America, in 1929, Walt Disney was born in a recession. And 50% of Fortune 500 companies are born in a recession. So look at those opportunities. And so would you like to hear another client success story? Raise your hand. Brilliant. Thank you. So I taught Craig how to make micro changes in his business. Now, you might be saying to yourself, what do you mean, Jacqueline, micro changes? Micro changes are going to have micro results. Well, actually, the opposite is true. So before I go on let me tell you about Zappa Shoes before I go into Craig's story. Now, Zappa Shoes are an online retailer. And they were paying the postage to the client. And then the owner of the business decided that he wanted to pay the postage for the returns on the shoes. The board were totally against it because they attached risk to that strategy. And again, they were seeing what they couldn't have instead of what they could have. But the owner of the company said, I'm going to test it out for 6 months and see what happens. So what they were actually doing was a risk reversal. They were taking the risk away from the customer. And by taking the risk away from the customer, it could have gone two ways, but actually Zappa Shoes found that their sales increased in the following 12 months by more than 50%. And they hardly had any other returns back because the customer felt it wasn't a risk for them.